Hello, welcome. My name is Brenda Suggett, and I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals, or CARSP. In case you're new to CARSP, I'll just tell you a little bit about it. We're a national multidisciplinary road safety organization. We've been around since 1985, and we provide support to Canada's road safety professionals by providing them with resources, training, and networking opportunities. We're very affordable. Our membership rate is only $75 a year. And we've got some exciting things coming up, including the launch of a new website in November, as well as a member engagement event. So I invite you to check those out. As well, we have partnered with ITE Canada, and we're bringing you the 2023 Joint Conference, which is going to be in Winnipeg from June 4th to the 7th. And we're actually going to be launching next week the call for abstracts, as well as the sponsorship exhibitor opportunities. Now, before I present today's speaker for you, I just want to talk a little bit about some housekeeping rules. So we'll be inviting you to provide your questions through the Q&A function of Zoom, and you can do that at any time throughout the webinar. However, the questions will be left until the end, and today's presentation will be going until about 10 to 1. So at that time, we will answer your questions. Without further ado, I will introduce you to today's webinar facilitator, and his webinar is Motor Vehicle Data, how, who, what, where, and why. And his name is Andrew Happer, and he is a senior forensic engineer at CEP Forensic, and has held a variety of leadership roles within the firm while providing consulting mechanical engineering services to clients throughout Western Canada. He is a registered professional engineer in 3 provinces and 2 territories. Over his 26-year career, Mr. Happer has reconstructed thousands of motor vehicle collisions that have involved extracting and interpreting electronic data recorded by onboard vehicle modules for the insurance, legal, and risk management fields. As an author of several peer-reviewed papers with international organizations, Mr. Happer has been involved in the advancement of knowledge in the collision reconstruction field. He has also appeared in court a dozen times, both in British Columbia and Alberta, and has been accepted as an expert in forensic engineering. Mr. Happer was instrumental in the reinstatement and is currently the past chairman of the Alberta section of the Society of Automotive Engineers, which is the international organization that advances technologies related to mobility. Mr. Happer has been a longtime member of SAE, CARSP, and other technical societies. So welcome, Mr. Happer, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Can everyone hear me okay? I hope so. So welcome everyone, and thank you to CARSP for giving me this opportunity to speak with you today. I'm going to be diving right in because there's a lot of information to cover. And as Brenda gave you a kind of a bit of a background on my work experience, that work experience has given me the opportunity to dive into motor vehicles, look at obtain the electronic information that's contained within them, and look at that information and evaluate what happened during an incident or during some sort of event. So I want to share that information with you today. So as Brenda mentioned, we're going to be going for probably about 45 minutes or so, and you may be surprised by the scope of information that is available in today's modern vehicles. So what I'm going to be discussing is I'm going to be touching upon engine fault codes, event data recorded by onboard passenger car and heavy truck modules. I'm going to talk about still images and videos that are recorded, telematics systems, and infotainment systems. And then I'm also going to address the information that's communicated wirelessly between connected vehicles and vehicle to infrastructure. The overview of vehicle data will then be followed by a discussion about its ownership and accessibility. I'll be describing who can access the information and what steps need to be taken to do so. I'll then present how this information can be used to reconstruct what happened during a reported event and the importance of this information to vehicle manufacturers, insurance companies, lawyers, and risk managers. So let's dive right in. The longest standing data stored on vehicles has been the trouble code data. This is a simple means of setting a flag for a specific problem to make it easier for mechanics to diagnose and troubleshoot. Diagnostic trouble codes, or DTCs, are unique identifiers that are recorded and kept in local ECU memory until they're cleared. Now, you'll find these on both passenger vehicles and heavy trucks. These system codes are stored on various modules on the vehicle, including the transmission control module, powertrain control module, steering column control module, body control module, etc. The scanning equipment will pull the vehicle's network to pull stored codes from the various ECUs. Now, passenger vehicles can be accessed through a variety of generic and manufacturer-specific scan tools. Heavy trucks, on the other hand, require proprietary software that is licensed by the engine manufacturers. You'll also find that brake component suppliers such as Bendix and Haldex will have their own systems that can track diagnostics. So what I'm showing on this slide here on the left side is what we call the DLC port, or diagnostic link connector, that you'll find on a passenger vehicle dashboard. This is the Deutsch connector that you find on heavy trucks. And these are standard connectors that allow these tools to connect to the vehicle. A scan of a vehicle's network can yield a summary of diagnostic trouble codes that are currently active, as well as historical codes. In some systems, the odometer reading at the time of the tripped code is recorded along with other operating parameters. For example, you might get steering wheel angle, vehicle speed, or accelerator pedal position. Recorded codes and when they occurred can illustrate a timeline of events regarding a vehicle's condition and help pinpoint when the vehicle experienced a particular issue. Now let's direct our attention to the supplemental restraint system in a passenger vehicle. There is a control module that controls the deployment of supplemental restraints, such as airbags and seatbelt pretensioners. This module has been commonly called the black box in passenger vehicles. The module has integrated sensors and is also connected to other secondary sensors to evaluate whether the supplemental restraints need to be deployed at the onset of a sensed event, which is characterized by a sudden change in acceleration or deceleration. The restraints don't always deploy in all crashes. The deployment criteria is designated by the manufacturer. The secondary function of these modules is to record data surrounding the event. The vehicle manufacturers use these recordings to ensure their restraint systems are working properly and also to better refine system performance. 99% of the new vehicles being manufactured today have event data recorders, or EDRs. This equates to over half of the registered passenger vehicles on the road have the capability to record EDR data, and this number keeps climbing. Vehicle models with this technology date back to around 1996. Most of the EDRs are accessed with a specialty tool called the Bosch Crash Data Retrieval System. It's been around for 22 years. The system is comprised of interface modules that connect to the various vehicle networks, cabling, and a licensed software subscription. In order to get the information from the vehicle, vehicles with intact electrical systems can be powered up and accessed using the DLC, or the diagnostic link connector, under the dashboard. In cases of severe damage where the electrical system is damaged, the information can still be accessed, but it takes more time and effort to either extract the physical module itself or access it directly in the vehicle. And the modules are typically, of course, installed in the vehicle somewhere near the center of mass. If you look here in the right side image, this shows the airbag module sandwiched underneath the dashboard. And of course, due to the deformation that occurred in the collision, was making it challenging to get to. The yellow adapter here is the harness that was connected to the module. So that's removed. And then this black cable is the direct module cable that's connected directly to it. Well, I guess you didn't see my pointer there. There we go. Right there. Now, the Bosch CDR tool will access the majority of passenger vehicles. However, there are a few notable exceptions where the other manufacturers have their own tools and kits that must be used to access the data. Two of these are, well, three are Hyundai, Kia, and Tesla. These systems work in a similar manner in which they can connect to the airbag module through the DLC port or by connecting to the module directly. Events recorded by EDRs are triggered after the system wakes up. If a module deems that an occupant restraint deployment is warranted, then it will record a deployment event. Otherwise, a non-deployment event is recorded. Now, deployment events cannot be erased from memory, but non-deployment events are volatile and can be overwritten. On older vehicles, 15 to 20 years plus, these non-deployment events could be erased after a certain number of ignition cycles or overwritten when a more severe event occurred. And those older vehicles could only retain one non-deployment event, so these could easily be overwritten over time. Now, more current vehicle models, however, they can retain several events, so these non-deployment events can stick around for a longer time frame. Now, the type of information recorded in these events is similar, and I've listed here some of the main parameters. They'll record the collision impulse or an acceleration time graph. They'll give some pre-event data, typically 5 to 8 seconds, and that information will include the vehicle speed, engine RPM, acceleration, steering wheel angle, yaw rate. It depends on each vehicle make and model and the age of the vehicle on exactly what kind of information you'll see. It will also give signal timing and information about what deployments occurred. And it will also tell you what the driver was doing regarding braking and acceleration application. Here's an example of some of that information from a passenger vehicle EDR. Newer vehicle models will give you even more data, including things such as ABS and stability control engagement, as well as the steering input and vehicle yaw or rotation rate. These details can indicate whether or not a driver may have lost control of the vehicle, whether due to high speed or environmental conditions. Some EDR reports also include individual wheel rotation speeds, which can be used to confirm ABS engagement, vehicle alignment, and contact surface friction differences from the presence of ice or snow. So quite useful information from that perspective. I wanted to mention powertrain control modules as well. On select Fords between 2003 and 2011 model years, they had PCMs that also recorded data. But these modules did not record events like EDRs did. They continuously recorded aspects of the vehicle operation as long as power was applied to the module. So it was basically a circular memory buffer. The data was similar to the pre-crash data found in EDRs, such as vehicle speed, engine RPM, and pedal positions. However, the unique aspect of these recordings were that they had memory that could contain anywhere from 20 seconds upwards to 5 minutes of data. This data was very volatile and would be overwritten if the ignition key was turned on. So care would have to be taken when downloading the data with the Bosch CDR system. Here's an example of the data output from a powertrain control module. What you see here is 126 seconds of data, and the black line shows the vehicle speed. And in this particular example, it says the RDS was not received. That's a restraint deployment signal. And in these vehicles, when the deployment signal was not received, it wouldn't know when the event occurred. So this was basically a recording of the memory buffer, and you'd have to evaluate where the impact occurred. And in this case, we can kind of see that it occurred somewhere at this point in time. I also want to mention motorcycles, as they too have EDRs. Now, there's a limited number of manufacturers making them with this capability. To my knowledge, Honda Goldwing and newer model Kawasaki's are the two main vehicle makes. There's no tool available at this time, so modules need to be extracted and sent to the manufacturer. The triggered events on these motorcycles can be airbag related, such as in the Honda case, or related to a tip over with a specific rear wheel rotation. The Kawasaki data can contain 8 seconds of information, including vehicle speed, throttle position, what gear the motorcycle is in. And I have little information right now on how many events it can record, but it's also useful to know that there's also some off-road vehicles as well, such as snowmobiles and ATVs that have the capability to record some events. Now, I want to talk about ADAS, These are the newer systems that have been developed and are becoming more and more common. Advanced driver assistance systems. They use a combination of radar and cameras to detect issues and provide different warnings to the driver. These could be visual, audible, or haptic, or vibrations in the steering wheel or seat. And if the warnings are not enough for the driver to respond, the vehicle may actively intervene with braking or steering. Radar uses a transmitter that emits a signal in a given direction, which bounces off an object, and the receiver then picks up the reflected signal. It can then be determined what the separation distance is, as well as the speed of the object that reflected the signal. Cameras are mounted at the top of the windshield, which are monitoring lane lines and objects in its field of view. The cameras can track vehicles and objects, determining their trajectories and time to collision. The algorithms used for analyzing the visual information have advanced greatly, resulting in numerous applications. Now, what I'm showing you here in this figure shows several of the applications you'll see in modern vehicles. And each manufacturer uses its own terminology for describing these different safety features. But you'll find these systems on both passenger vehicles and heavy trucks. In general, most of the new driver assist technologies are not yet recording data. For those few systems that do log data, the manufacturer may need to get involved to access the information, either by sending the module away or having them attend the vehicle. Now, one exception to this is that GM has allowed access to their active safety control module and their front camera module data through the conventional CDR tool on 2016 and newer vehicle models. Now, the ASCM can only store one event, recording about 4 seconds of data that's triggered by an auto brake or an airbag deployment. The other tool to mention is the Toyota TechStream tool. It too can give access to pre-collision system data on Toyotas and Lexus vehicles. Now, the data related to collision warning systems can include details not only of the vehicle that it's on, but also about the other detected vehicle. And this data can be time-stamped and geolocated as well. And what I've listed here is some of the information you'll find on these systems. Some of them give you roadway curve radius. They're giving, of course, vehicle speed, acceleration, steering angle, and information about the object that's been detected in front. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. So here's an example from the Toyota TechStream tool, which is a very versatile tool providing access to multiple ECUs. The tool can be used for reviewing detailed diagnostic information and can also be used, in this case, to access pre-collision system data related to autonomous emergency braking events. The system records numerous operating parameters about the vehicle for 5 seconds before and 5 seconds after the detected event. The key difference about the ADAS data compared to the EDR data is that EDRs record information related to an impact or collision event, whereas the ADAS record data related to sensed objects ahead, where a collision doesn't necessarily have to have occurred. So here's an example from a Detroit assurance system in a Freightliner commercial truck. The upper half of the table above shows the timing of warnings given to the driver and the timing of the active braking application, and the driver's steering and acceleration are listed. So here's the time up on the top row. So you can see that time 0 is when the acoustic warning and the optic warning was provided to the driver. And then about a second later, a haptic warning was provided. And then at 2.4 seconds is when the emergency braking was applied. But the interesting thing is we also can get details related to the other vehicle. The bottom half of the table shows the speed of the vehicle being tracked and its acceleration. The relative vehicle positioning is also identified. So here's the distance to the tracked object, and it gives you distance in meters here, which you can see is decreasing. And it also gives you the speed of the tracked object here as well, and it shows you the vehicle ahead is decelerating. So this system logged about 5 seconds of positional data for these two vehicles. So on the topic of heavy trucks, let me talk a bit about the EDRs on heavy trucks. Since about 1997, heavy trucks have had EDRs. But since most trucks don't have passive restraints, These EDRs do not record events related to airbag deployments. The EDRs are contained within the engine control modules. These modules are mounted directly to the engine, and their recording capabilities differ based on the type of the engine on the truck. And what I've shown here are a lot of the common engine manufacturers that you'll find on heavy trucks. Each engine manufacturer has their own proprietary software and hardware that is needed to access the ECM. However, there are some aftermarket tools that have been developed that will allow access to multiple different truck engines. The events that are recorded by heavy truck ECMs are kind of categorized in 3 types of events. The first type of event is a hard brake or a sudden deceleration. This is triggered, of course, by a heavy brake application or a collision that causes the truck to decelerate beyond a threshold, typically around 0.4 G. The next type of event is a critical fault. This is related to an engine sensor that has a reading that's beyond a certain value, so that will trigger a fault event. And the third type of event is a last stop event, where it records information the last time the vehicle comes to a stop. The reason for these type of events is in a lot of cases, when a heavy truck that has a large mass is involved in a collision with another vehicle, a smaller vehicle or a pedestrian, it won't necessarily detect an event, like a sudden deceleration. So the last stop information is an opportunity to capture data immediately after an incident. The type of information that's recorded on the trucks includes about a minute of pre-event data and 15 seconds of post-event data. And it's very similar to what you see as in passenger cars. You get vehicle speed, engine RPM, the status of cruise control and ABS activation, as well as throttle position and braking status. Some heavy truck component suppliers have systems for performing operational diagnostics, and as part of their function also include data recorders. Bendix is an example of this. Bendix has ECUs for monitoring anti-lock braking, stability control, and traction control. And these data recorders can record triggered events based on brake activation and collision mitigation systems, and will record several events, about 20 seconds or so surrounding that event. And again, that same kind of information, vehicle speed, steering angle, accelerator, brakes. But in order to get this information, you have to make a request to Bendix. Now, we're entering an era where images and videos are being captured by motor vehicles. These images are being recorded by cameras that are utilized as part of the ADAS or driver assist technologies for collision avoidance applications such as lane departure warning, night vision, adaptive cruise control, and pre-collision braking. These systems are in both heavy trucks and passenger cars, as I've mentioned earlier. But because these technologies are relatively recent, commercially available methods for accessing this information have not yet become commonplace. In most cases, a request of the manufacturer has to be made, as in the Detroit Diesel VRDU and Bendix collision mitigation systems. But there's a few exceptions, which I'm going to talk about here, which is GM, Tesla, and Toyota. As I mentioned previously, GM's active safety control modules and front camera modules are recording event data, and they're also recording images. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any examples to show you of that because I haven't yet had the opportunity to access any of those. But Tesla records both videos and images, and the Toyota TechStream will record still images around a sensed hazard event or a case with its automatic emergency braking. Let's talk about the Tesla quickly. So Teslas have a dashboard camera, as well as side view cameras that will record to a USB in the center console. The vehicle owner, though, has to set up the USB for these recordings to be accessible. In addition to capturing a forward-looking dashboard camera view while driving, the Tesla system has a Sentry mode that can capture vehicle movement when the vehicle is parked. It will pick up vandalism, thefts, hit and runs. So here's an example of a hit and run captured by a Tesla that was parked. So on the left side is a video frame from the camera mounted to the side of the vehicle, looking backwards. the upper right is the forward-looking view from the camera. So in this case, the Tesla video cameras were able to capture the hit and run culprit and also get the license plate from that vehicle in the video because it's very high quality. The Tesla will also capture images. And I've shown this example, which some of you may have heard about. This is the Delray Beach, Florida fatal crash that happened in March of 2019, where a 2018 Tesla Model 3 that was on autopilot collided with the side of a tractor trailer unit. In this case, they were able to extract still images from the Tesla camera system at 1-second intervals leading up to the point of impact. So the top image here is at 5 seconds before the impact, then 4 seconds, 3, 2, and 1. And so as you can see, these images are fairly good quality in color, and of course show the progression of the tractor trailer unit across the path of the Tesla. So these images can be very useful in piecing together what happened during an incident. The Toyota TechStream, on the other hand, has low resolution black and white camera images that can be recorded before and after a trigger point. These 6 images were captured in a Toyota that was driven in an alleyway and subsequently struck the corner of the garage. Now, this was a hit and run claim where the owner claimed they had sustained front bumper damage that was caused while they were parked in a parking lot. So after examining the vehicle, we were able to see the nature of the damage on the front bumper and of course download the technical data and show that in fact this front bumper damage resulted when the person was driving the vehicle and struck the garage. So this was able to refute the owner's claim. Now, with a driver's consent, a telematics device gathers information from the vehicle and uploads it to the cloud to allow for a specific assessment of driver behavior and risk. These systems do not store any data on the vehicle, but the data resides with a telematics provider. These devices typically use cellular data to communicate with the internet and can be found in different forms. Some vehicle manufacturers integrate these systems into the vehicle, and it is up to the vehicle owner on whether they decide to subscribe to the monthly service. So I've listed a few here that have various functions. So these systems can be used to monitor vehicle maintenance issues and provide diagnostic reports. Other features allow them to report crash occurrences, call emergency services, and they can also be used to provide navigation details. And in cases of vehicle thefts, these systems can be used to actually track the stolen vehicle. I'll mention that with Tesla vehicles are automatically communicating with Tesla servers all the time. So they're continuously logging details about the vehicle. Now, this data is stored in what's called a diagnostic log that Tesla owners can request a copy of for a specific date at any time. For those vehicles that don't have telematics built in, aftermarket systems can be installed. This is a common practice for vehicle fleets and in particular the private trucking industry, as the truck manufacturers typically don't provide a fleet management option. I've listed some of the common ones here on the slide. These systems typically involve a GPS receiver that is permanently installed on the vehicle in conjunction with video cameras and other sensors. These systems don't assist drivers, but provide for review of vehicle operation by the fleet manager, who can use a web browser interface to track both real-time and historical data. These systems retain information for years as data is continuously uploaded to online servers. The type of data that's included on these systems, because it's GPS-based, will provide a timestamp, latitude and longitude of the vehicle. From that, it'll give its altitude, heading, and speed. But the video camera feeds and sensor outputs are also tied in with that. So an example of a sensor would be, for example, a municipality or a city that has a fleet of vehicles, garbage trucks, sanding trucks. So they can input sensors to know when those vehicles were activating depositing aggregate on the roadway, or when they were lifting garbage cans into the truck, so they could monitor the performance as well. Now, devices can also be plugged into the vehicle's DLC adapter that transmit information to a cloud server. This information can be used to track the vehicle operation. For example, a teenager's use of the family vehicle can be monitored. Telematics is a growing trend for insurers in jurisdictions around the world, as prudent drivers can benefit from lower insurance rates and insight into their driving behavior. As an example, with the Tech Pilot project that ICBC completed, they wanted to explore if telematics could help reduce crashes and improve driver behavior. So their program involved an app with a smartphone that connected with a device on the vehicle. I want to give some mention to aftermarket devices that can be commonly found in motor vehicles. Personal navigational devices were more common before smartphones, but they are still used today. These mobile GPS devices, Garmin is a common brand, of course, can log GPS location. Dashboard video cameras are also becoming more popular. These cameras can be found looking forward out the windshield. They can be looking rearward out the rear window, or rearwards at the driver. They can also have integrated GPS and acceleration event sensing. The recordings on these devices are fairly easy to access, as the devices or their digital media cards can be plugged into a computer and read directly in a file explorer. Infotainment systems. Like collision warning systems, these are newer technology and provide further accessible data in vehicles. The infotainment system refers to the interface between the user and the vehicle, which includes navigation, where you connect your smartphone, playing music, and adjusting settings in your vehicle. As vehicles continue to advance, more and more data is being transferred through the infotainment system, and their functionality is expanding. A company called Burla has reverse engineered these systems to allow access to the recorded data within, some of which is fairly personal data. Within the collision reconstruction community, this is commonly referred to as a Burla download. The data extractions on these systems range from simple to complex. In some cases, a USB stick can be simply inserted into the system to copy files. And in other cases, the module needs to be removed, disassembled, and the circuit board accessed using specialized electronic components. In these cases, it can take hours to image or copy the data, which can produce massive data files, upwards of 80 gigabytes. Now, there are tens of thousands of vehicle models covered by this, and the number of available systems continues to grow. This is a continuously evolving technology. So as the coverage is always changing, we gain access to new systems. I've given a list here of some of the more common makes that currently have accessible systems. And more recently, I've learned that Harley-Davidson motorcycles also have an infotainment system option that can be installed. Now, the data found on these systems will be module dependent. Some units contain very little data, while others will have an overwhelming amount of data. One of the key things it records is device connections. So this is devices connected via Bluetooth or USB to the vehicle. When those devices connect, the system tracks a unique identifier and the type of device that's connected. For example, is it an iPhone or a Samsung? As part of that, other information that comes with that connection are contacts stored on the phone, media files, call logs, text messages, internet activity. So this really makes you think about what kind of data someone may be leaving on a vehicle, for example, especially a rental car, when you get in and connect your mobile device. Now, these modules can record vehicle events. These aren't the same type of crash events, but these are events related to the operation of the vehicle. So for example, it will record the door opening and closing, lights turning on, gear shift changes. It'll track where the vehicle was when the odometer clicked over, Some of them will monitor hard brake and acceleration events. And if the car has navigation, it will also allow geotagging to occur with each of these events. Track logs are available that can show the travel history of the vehicle. Now, the data that's being retained on these infotainment systems are potentially being retained for the lifetime of the vehicle, as long as there's enough memory. This means that personal information stays with the vehicle as it changes ownership. Now, I know that a master system reset can be done on some vehicles. Now, although you may be able to do a master system reset through the settings menu that may obscure information to subsequent users, but most of that information is still within the memory registers and can be obtained by completing a physical acquisition at a later date. Now, I also want to mention that Tesla infotainment units have an integrated SD card that record, the Tesla system communicates with Tesla servers, and the internal SD card typically carries about the last year of data. But this information is encrypted, and in order to get access to that information, that has to be sent to Tesla and have them decrypt it. Unlike EDR event data that is fairly limited, the infotainment systems yield vast amounts of data. This slide shows an example of the overwhelming amount of data that one can get from a vehicle. So what I'm showing here is from a Sync Gen 3 infotainment unit on a Ford. On the left sidebar here, you can see connections, devices, and thousands of events here, thousands of events and navigation. Taking a closer look into the events, we see media and device events, call logs, odometer and gear shift events, door and wheel traction events, hard acceleration and hard braking events. Within the hard braking events, there are date and time stamps associated with it, as well as geotag locations. So this can give an idea of the driving maneuvers on any particular date. So that's listed over here on the right. And it also includes a graphical illustration of the geotagged information. Intelligent transportation systems are now being developed that use advanced communications to solve transportation challenges. They are being implemented in roadways, intersections, and traffic management centers to link infrastructure and vehicles in real time. Canada is playing a lead role in the development of this technology, with the active Aurora partnership in BC and Alberta, with the only real-world testbed for V2I communication. V2I, or Vehicle to Infrastructure Communication, is the wireless exchange of data between vehicles and road infrastructure. Vehicular communication systems are computer networks in which vehicles and roadside units are the communicating nodes, providing each other with information. Roadside units can take data from vehicles and evaluate traffic conditions, optimize signal timing, and communicate back to other vehicles. Some infrastructure systems simply detect Bluetooth-enabled devices to evaluate traffic flow patterns, while others communicate with the vehicles and alert the driver to pending threats. This can be effective in avoiding accidents and traffic congestion. Now, the information that's sent out from vehicles is sent out in what's called a basic safety message. The information contained in this is fairly standardized. It includes a temporary ID, the vehicle position, some basic parameters of the motion of the vehicle, the brake application, and the vehicle size. There's also Part 2 data that contains a variable set of data elements depending on the vehicle model. Now, these additional elements can be transmitted less frequently and include things like windshield wiper status, ambient air temperature, traction control status, anti-lock brake system status. So this information can be used to help communicate changing road conditions and when hazardous situations arise. There are a couple of established ways for the wireless communication to take place. One uses a dedicated frequency bandwidth, and the other rides over top of the cellular phone architecture. The range of the roadside units are about 1 kilometer, so communication can take place over large distances. There currently is no way for the data to be recorded or accessed by others. Now, this may change in the future, but as you can imagine, cybersecurity risks for V2I and V2V technologies are paramount, and a key part of future research initiatives. Data within the vehicle and wireless communication needs to be secure, otherwise mayhem could occur if vehicles become compromised. So that is my overview of all the information that's stored in motor vehicles. Let's take a look at the ownership of the data. In general, data stored in vehicles can be classified into one of two categories. One is vehicle-specific data. So this includes diagnostic trouble codes, EDR data, ECU data, GPS location. These are things that can be observed when the vehicle is being operated, and there's really no expectation of privacy. The second type of information we'll call person-specific. This is the information typically found on infotainment systems, where it's including information about the devices that connect to the vehicle, as well as personal contact information, call logs, texts, and other media. Over the past 20 years, there have been more than 75 cases in Canadian courts that have dealt with the acquisition and acceptance of electronic data from motor vehicles. The data has been accepted in the courts as long as the person representing the information has obtained it lawfully and is able to explain what the data means. In general, these court cases have dealt with EDR data or vehicle-specific data. There hasn't been much that deals with the newer ADAS technologies or infotainment systems or that person-specific data. Nonetheless, the owner of the vehicle has been established as the owner of the electronic information. Therefore, the vehicle owner has to provide permission or authorization for the information to be collected. Vehicle manufacturers have been putting detailed descriptions in owner's manuals, so vehicle owners should have an idea of the nature of the information that their vehicle records. To my knowledge, there is not much precedence in who owns the person-specific data that resides in motor vehicles, particularly when there may be personal information of other people residing in the vehicle's memory. Imagine a rental vehicle that has had multiple renters connect their personal phones to the infotainment system. There could be a multitude of personally identifying information that is unrelated to the rental car owner. To date, since that person-specific information is contained within the vehicle, police agencies and insurance companies are handling it as though the vehicle owner is the gatekeeper. So now let me address the accessibility of this data and how one goes about obtaining it. The first type of data I spoke about, that is the engine fault codes, has fallen under the radar and really hasn't been a concern from a privacy perspective. Most consider this data as an integral part of a motor vehicle, as it does not contain any personally identifying information, and to the layperson may not have any meaning. These fault codes are accessible by scan tools that are easily obtainable, and any auto repair facility, car dealership, and private investigator can access them. The other vehicle data, though, has been handled differently, as special tools are needed. Only police and private investigators are typically the ones trying to access that data. I should iterate that automotive dealerships do not have the capability to access EDR and infotainment system data. Police agencies are commonly involved in accessing motor vehicle data as they are the first ones on the scene of a serious motor vehicle collision, and they must complete an investigation to see if anyone should be charged. The police are most interested in EDR data as that can contain vehicle speed, which is one of the key parameters they are interested in evaluating because they want to see if someone was exceeding the speed limit. The way that police handle accessing EDR data depends on the jurisdiction, but most agencies will get search warrants for all vehicle downloads. Some, however, will complete a download at the scene of an accident for ease of access and as part of the on-scene investigation. Since preservation of evidence is important, they can argue that they needed to do the acquisition on site. Now, police have told me that they can access vehicle data by getting an owner's authorization, but they would need to prove that the owner had informed consent. And it's a fine line because an owner may not know the full scope of information that's being obtained. If it's later found that there was a piece of information they weren't aware of, then evidence can be thrown out. So the safe approach for the police is to always get a search warrant. In the case of criminal charges, a search warrant is definitely always obtained, and the warrant has to specify the type of vehicle information that is to be acquired. Now, the private work completed by investigators, such as forensic engineers like myself, is normally done on behalf of an insurance company or a legal representative. Insurance policies set out the requirements of an insured vehicle owner to cooperate with their insurer whenever a claim takes place. And I've extracted some example wording here. You might see on your policy, the insured must aid in securing information and evidence and must cooperate with the insurer. It could also say, the insured must permit the insurer at all reasonable times to inspect the automobile and its equipment. It's this underlying agreement that allows insurance companies to investigate claims and collect all of the available information needed to make an informed decision. When an insurance company asks an investigator to inspect a vehicle related to an insurance claim, that investigator has the de facto permission from the vehicle owner as the investigator is acting on their behalf. This inspection includes acquiring any electronic data that may be present in the vehicle. Now, the approach of insurance companies to access the infotainment systems, which could contain person-specific data, is to obtain a separate signed release from the insured to allow this acquisition. But that's not a hard rule, and some insurers allow the access without a separate signed release. Now, when it comes to inspecting a third-party vehicle, authorization must come from that third-party vehicle owner or their insurance company to inspect the vehicle. So I've discussed the various types of data that can be found in motor vehicles. I now want to talk about the importance of this information and how it can be used. It may be obvious what some of this information can be used for. As shown here, for example, engine fault codes and diagnostic details are important for repair facilities to troubleshoot issues with vehicle performance. Also, when it comes to occupant restraints, the EDR data has been important for automotive manufacturers to confirm operational parameters at the time of airbag deployments or during collision events, so that they can evaluate allegations of failure or improve restraint performance. In addition, monitored vehicle fleets and telematics systems can be used for real-time assessment of collision occurrences, vehicle locations, vehicle operation, and driver behavior. This is valuable information for fleet managers to evaluate employee performance, vehicle performance, and identify risks before they result in lost time incidents. Also, the connected vehicle to infrastructure information can evaluate roadway hazards as they develop in real time. The real-time information processing can also be implemented into a risk management program that monitors and evaluates driver performance, which can facilitate immediate corrective practices, and vehicle performance for immediate maintenance requirements, both of which can improve fleet safety. But let me explain how this electronic data can be used for insurance and legal liability. In my work, I'm hired to analyze physical evidence and electronic data from vehicles to evaluate what happened during a motor vehicle collision or incident. The results of my work are used by my clients to determine how liability should be apportioned, whether there is subrogation potential against another involved party, or what amount the insurance company should be preparing to pay out for quantum or the damages. What I've listed here on this slide is some of the key pieces of information in this realm. Let's start with vehicle maintenance history. A good example, a driver loses control on ice and claims that the ABS stability control didn't work. An examination of the vehicle shows a damaged wheel speed sensor, and the history of the vehicle's condition shows a repeated ABS system trouble code that occurred immediately after the owner had the struts placed. Now, this could prove a subrogation opportunity against the repair facility. Vehicle motion and dynamics. This is an important one. From the collected data, the vehicle motion can be evaluated and calculated over an extended period of time. The electronic data supplements the physical evidence. For example, pre-impact skid marks can show the path of a vehicle and be used to calculate its pre-braking speed. With the additional insight from electronic data, the vehicle's motion before any physical marks are created on the road can be determined. This leads to determining driver responses and behaviors leading up to the collision, This is an important aspect of collision analysis so as to be able to comment on whether a driver responded appropriately in the circumstances. The details determined from infotainment system data can help identify what devices or smartphones were in a vehicle at a certain point in time. This is useful to evaluate those cases where a vehicle is allegedly stolen or there is a question as to who was inside a vehicle at the time of an incident. The additional insight from infotainment GPS track logs and traction events can show insight into roadway conditions and whether slippery conditions existed or contributed to the cause of a collision. The background image on this slide shows the aftermath of a multi-vehicle highway collision. In cases like this, where several vehicles are involved, it can be challenging to piece together the sequence of events simply from looking at vehicle rest positions and damage. The electronic data can be helpful to piece together individual impacts and vehicle speeds, which is helpful to insurers to determine liability. Overall, motor vehicle data fills in the blanks around the other physical evidence and can be used to determine what factors contributed to an incident. This technical assessment assists insurance adjusters, lawyers, and risk managers to make informed decisions regarding liability. So that concludes my presentation for you, and I'd be happy at this time to take any questions that you have on this topic.
Well, thank you very, very much. That was an extremely interesting presentation, Andrew, and thanks for all the work you put into that. It was very comprehensive. It's raised a lot of questions in my mind. I mean, it's a topic that I think we'll be talking about for years to come. So I'll just go straight into the questions here. So Russ Heslop asks, I am curious to see when Canadian Defence Council challenges the no expectation of privacy to the data. For example, when the vehicle is owned and operated by the same person and the data is specific to some event that the driver was involved in. Currently, the courts are accepting that there is no expectation of privacy. However, I suspect that may change.
Yes, that's a good comment. It's the technology is fairly new, right? Particularly with the Burla systems that can access the infotainment information. It's probably been in the last 5 years. So it really hasn't yet hit, I think, the court system. But it's going to be interesting to see how that is handled by the courts, particularly when a case comes up where there might be information on that vehicle that is, personally identifying to somebody else unrelated to the owner or the incident. I think it's been well established related to the information that's recorded related to the vehicle itself, that information is part of the vehicle and is owned by the vehicle owner. So as long as that information is obtained lawfully with permission or authorization, and that the person presenting that information in court has the qualification and has the capability to describe and explain that information and what it means and what the uncertainty in that information is, then it's accepted. From my knowledge, the only times that motor vehicle data has not been accepted by the courts is when there's been an issue with how the information was obtained, or in cases where the person presenting the data could not explain what it meant, right, and didn't understand the nuances. For example, in a lot of cases, well, quite frequently, we see anomalies in the data. I'll give you a simple example, right? If a driver slams on the brakes and there's no ABS, their wheels will stop rotating. So the vehicle speed recorded by the EDR will be 0, but the vehicle could still be moving across the ground. So you have to be able to interpret that and explain, well, yeah, it shows 0 kilometers per hour, but the vehicle is still moving. That's just a simple example. But these kind of anomalies or nuances in the data have to be understood by whoever's presenting it.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here. Do you know of any instances of cyber attacks targeting the person-specific data in infotainment systems?
No, I have not heard of any cases of that. I do know that some, or I guess they're white hat hackers, demonstrated at one of the cyber conferences a couple, 2 or 3 years ago, that they were able to successfully hack into a car, and I think they were able to actually hack into the operation of the vehicle and control the vehicle. So there are instances in the community of this showing that there are some security vulnerabilities, and so my understanding is that is a key area that needs to be researched, and work has to be done to really ensure that there is an inability or very difficult for that to occur, because it's a huge safety hazard if a hacker can hack in, not just to get personal information, but hack into a vehicle and all of a sudden cause all these vehicles to make a left-hand turn, right? You'll have mass destruction, right? Vehicles hitting pedestrians and going off the road and all this kind of stuff. So that is a really important aspect of vehicles now that they're connecting to the internet, right, and are cloud-based. There is a vulnerability there. But to answer the question, no, I'm not aware of any instances where that personal information has been acquired.
Okay, here's another question. Have you been able to gain access to insurance company data from the owner's use of driver applications?
So I'm thinking, is the question asking about, sorry, the owner's use of applications on their smartphone?
If that person's on, but could they just clarify? Yeah, I'm not really sure. Sorry. We can go on to the next question.
Yeah, let's go to the next question and maybe come back to that one.
So yeah, so Russ had another question. So in some jurisdictions, the owner is rarely included in obtaining permission. In Manitoba, the police procedures are all over the map, with some getting search warrants and some not. The inconsistency is in obtaining search warrants may likely come back to haunt some criminal investigations. A large municipal police agency in Manitoba, as well as the RCMP, will often forego the search warrant, even when exigent circumstances don't exist, and download the data at the scene. Again, when there is no urgent evidentiary necessity.
Interesting. Yes, so definitely different detachments of the police and jurisdictions will treat things differently, and it sounds like this person who's commented here has experience in Manitoba. So yeah, if that's the case, I can tell you, for the preparation of this talk today, I spoke with several RCMP reconstructionists as well as local police to get insight into how they approach things. And I was getting common responses after speaking with probably about 5 individuals in the police force. And they advised me that in criminal, when they're attempting to charge someone criminally, they will get a search warrant. And in most cases, I'm not going to say all, I was told that they're getting search warrants. But there are those times where the vehicles are on site, and there are some individuals in the police who will do the download at the scene, because it's non-destructive to download the EDR data, and they feel in their experience that they can argue that that was required because the vehicles may be going towed away and then destroyed. But I think if it's happening frequently that a search warrant is not being obtained, then a savvy lawyer representing that party may be able to use that as fodder to say that information can't be relied upon.
I've got some clarification on that earlier question.
Okay.
And I'll just read it again. Have you been able to gain access to insurance company data from the owner's use of driver apps? And he's clarified and said, for instance, a dongle, I guess if you're connecting your smartphone. So I guess it's personal use is what he's talking about. Like, has the insurance company been able to access personal use data?
Well, I think the answer to that question is yes. As part of our investigations, we've downloaded infotainment systems, and typically our focus is on, normally it's the location of the vehicle, what it was doing at a certain point in time. But as part of that, there will be other information in there, and this happens in a lot of investigations that we do. We get provided, let's say, questioning for discovery transcripts that have a lot of personal stuff in it, but it's not pertinent to our investigation, and we're under confidentiality, so that information doesn't go beyond our walls. So I think, to answer the question, yes, there is personal information that could be reviewed not only by the insurance company, but by someone working on behalf of the insurance company.
Okay, perfect. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. But I will send you the remaining questions that haven't been answered. I'll send that to you after this. And I just want to once again thank you. And there's a lot of thank yous coming on the Q&A. Just excellent presentation, excellent overview. Yeah, I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. And we've actually recorded this, and we'll have it available on the CARS website in the member area. And I'll also provide you with a link to it, Andrew, if you want to share it with any of your colleagues or any other work contacts. So just once again, thank you so much for doing this presentation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. And yes, I'd be happy to answer any other questions via email.
Great. Okay, take care.
Bye now.
Bye.